I'm Dawn Manafusco, and this is Right Because It Matters. And today I have one of my favorite people who happens to live in Portland, near me, which is awesome. Her name is Devorah Spillman. And Devorah has been a master storyteller for over 30 years. Today she helps writers and entrepreneurs find clarity and confidence to tell their deep, authentic story and to get rid of any blocks holding them back. Her in-story group takes people on a journey to find their soul's calling and bring their story, mission, and message out to the world. Devorah has clients all over the world writing books and building businesses based on her deep and empowering process. Hi, Devorah.
Hey, Dawn.
That felt really good to read. So I'm going to just jump right in.
Okay.
And so how about you tell us how your business got started in terms of helping your clients get unstuck through the power of story?
So it probably didn't start exactly with that. So I've been a storyteller for probably a little over 30 years, maybe even 40 years. And so I spent much of my career being a performer. And about 4 years ago, people began saying to me, "Oh, Devorah, I wish I could tell stories like you." And I remember a friend saying to me, I said, "You can tell stories." She said, "No, I'm terrible." And I said, "You know what, I'll show you how. Sit down and I'll lead you through a process." So I led her through this guided process, which I've later given the acronym STATE to. And
What is it called?
STATE. It's
STATE.
an acronym. And I'll go,
STATE?
right, and I'll go through that a little bit later. But I led her through this process that took her into an inner quiet place, helped her access her story from inside herself and bring it out. And it was so amazing to her that she said, "Can you do that for my nonprofit? And can you do that?" And people began asking me, and I did a little research and saw that really the idea of telling stories in business was a big idea. And so
Wow.
I started my company, Spillman Story Selling.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when you start something and you're an entrepreneur, what happens is your soul tends to rise to the occasion, so to speak. And so it went deeper. And what I began to notice is when I took people into that deep place, what they got were very deep images, metaphors, and stories. And then sometimes what happened was they went so deep that they bumped into where they were blocked. And it led me into coaching, not just training. Like when I started, I really helped people in business find and tell stories to sell.
Sell the presentations.
Right,
correct?
and
Like
it
to
really
order.
works.
Yeah, gotcha,
Right.
gotcha.
Right, I have a friend who made my website who wanted a multi-million-dollar contract because I taught him how to use metaphor. But I am really deep and spiritual, and I say I'm clear, focused, deep, and a little wacky. That's
good. That's my people.
right. So that being yourself has become a big part of what I do. That sense that you can go inside yourself and really integrate all the parts of yourself, find out what it is, find its expression, its voice, its story, its message and mission, and then you can bring it out and put it in a book or
Sure.
speaking or a business.
On our website. Yeah.
But when you do that deep work, what happens sometimes is you bump up against other stories that are not serving you. You know, the
I do.
stories that you tell yourself, we tell ourselves that are not working, those stories?
The critic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened was my clients started bumping into that, and I through this deep process, I created another form of this process that it takes the stories that are locked down and releases them.
Yes.
So you can think of it, I'll use a good metaphor, since I talk a lot about metaphor. You know, any sci-fi fans, I don't know if any of you are, but if you are, in Star Trek, you know, they would fly, you know, into this planet that's been, you know, abandoned for 50,000 years, but still had the defense system in operation. We have that. We have stories that are still in operation that were put up to defend us when we needed them.
Right.
But now we don't need them anymore.
Right.
And so
Yes.
you can actually release those.
Yes.
And then they become your wisdom, they become your insight, and they allow you to have an opening to access to what's underneath that.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool, actually.
You did a process with me where, well, we don't have to go into my process, but what I noticed is that you helped me to remove the lie. So in terms of the story, the defense system that doesn't need to be there, the way that I interpret it was, wow, I've been lying to myself. Like maybe it was there for a reason at some time,
right.
but now I'm using this and it doesn't apply and it's holding me back.
Right.
So I love the idea that, in terms of story, it's not just about telling the truth, it's about sometimes removing the lie.
Right. Well, so one of the ways I like to think about it is that if you think of your soul or your essence as being something very light and clean and clear and shiny. So I like to say it gets schmutz on it. It gets dirt. It gets covered up. Or one of my clients, she used the image of it gets like tarnished. And so another metaphor is that it's not that your essence is diminished, it's that it gets covered over. And so this inner process allows you to, so to speak, clear that out.
Yes.
So let me say what the steps of this process are, so people kind of have an inkling of how it is, and then we can decide if we have time to do a little round through it, or they'll get it in the gift later. So these are the steps. The first step is the S, which is stop and breathe. This is really classic what you have to do to start any inner process, right? Because we're all going so fast. We're often on automatic, and you'll notice that any process of a meditation type or a change your consciousness will always start with stop and breathe and close your eyes.
Yeah.
Unless you're driving. So this already puts you in a whole different state, and I'll often say, feel that shift to stillness.
Yes.
So once a person's in that state, then I have them feel this sense of that flow from above. That sense of being connected to God, the universe, that very pure source of light and love. You feel that come through your whole being, can ground you in the earth, and then bring up that energy from the earth so that you become clear and centered and in the state of connected flow. Then once you're in that clear state, which is really pretty much universal to almost every form of meditation. So then here's where I go into kind of a new area. Once you're in that state, the T is think about it. What this does is this is where your conscious mind is kind of giving direction to your subconscious mind, in a sense. So you can think about what's blocking you. You can think about your mission and your message in the world. I'll often say to people, think about who you are and what you do in the world. But the think about it varies a lot. The next two steps go together, which is ask and trust.
Right.
So what's important about ask and trust and why they go together is the way that you get information from your subconscious is always going to be in a weird, uncanny way. And you have to trust the thing that shows up first. So you ask. A classic thing I'll ask is, what's an image or a metaphor for who I am and what I do in the world? So up will pop, like some weird thing. Like a butterfly, a moth, or a shoe, or a tree, or whatever. And then we explain and interpret it. How is what I do in the world like this? And my free gift is going to be about metaphor mastery. And so people will get a lot of help with how to use metaphor. Metaphor takes you into this very deep realm and gives you access often to insights that you wouldn't be able to get any other way.
Yeah.
And then they become useful. People really remember metaphor powerfully. So here, I didn't really answer your question. If a person comes to me and they're upset, they're blocked, a story that's very painful comes up for them, what we do is I do a whole process where once we get to think about it, I have them think about the story and I have them imagine and visualize putting that story into a sphere of golden light. And to let that go. And then we visualize this kind of clearing light. So it's this kind of energy, imagery, clearing work that it works.
Well, the imagination is very powerful. Whether it's
right.
Studies have shown that imagination is the way to go for much healing in today's world, that we haven't given it enough credit. And it's just now.
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
This is sort of one of the next things, actually, that I really have a lot of interest and passion about, is to get people speaking about imagination. I wrote my undergraduate thesis on the importance of imagination and learning with young people. And there's something about exactly what you said, that when you give your imagination room, that it will show up with something extraordinary, and it becomes real in a different kind of real. And that real has this tremendously transformative power, both for transforming how you feel in yourself and also how you communicate to somebody else. And I think it opens up worlds that are not accessible in any other way.
Excellent. I want to talk a little bit more about imagination in terms of writing.
Okay.
So what I love that you help me with as a writer and as a person, but also when I'm having a writer's block, even if, people say, well, I'm writing nonfiction or memoir, and as a writing coach, when I'm working with them on their blocks, I say, well, tell me more, use your imagination. And then they think, well, am I lying? And we have to figure that out. For instance, if they were walking through the woods, and they just say, oh, I walked through the woods to get to the other side. I say, no, what happened when you were walking through the woods? Bring the reader into that walk through the woods. And then they usually go, wow, I forgot about that walk. And then another healing process is happening as they're writing about something that they stopped and they got a little deeper in. So how do you see your process, I mean, I know you know this, helping writers move through these blocks?
So I'll give you a great example of this, because I have a client, she's been working with me now for almost like 2.5 years, and she came to me, a friend recommended me to her because she knew she had to write her life story, and she literally couldn't get it to come out of her. It's not that she couldn't remember it. It was so big and complicated, and some of it so difficult that she couldn't find a starting point.
Wow, yeah.
So I said, it doesn't matter where you start. What you're going to do is I'm going to lead you through this state process, and whatever story comes up, write that one.
Nice.
You're going to forget about form.
Yes.
You're going to forget about what form it's going to be, what the end result is going to be, because while people, especially writers, when they worry about the end, they can't begin.
It's true.
And you can't edit while you write. So this process, what it does is it goes around your editor. It goes around your try-harder mind and allows your subconscious to just bring things up that you have no idea what you're going to get, what order you're going to get it in. And so we did everything from the real stories. She was seduced and abused by a priest as a young married woman. And it destroyed her marriage, it destroyed her life, and she put her whole life back together. And now she wants to write it and teach it and help other women to move forward. But she couldn't start.
Wow.
And now she's written volumes, tons about her. Now she's writing about her father, who was extraordinary. She's written a letter to the Pope, and she's opened up this whole world inside of her. And then she was also able to integrate things that happened in her life. So, for example, she moved, she got new carpet, and it was toxic. And when we went through that whole story, I said, this is a perfect metaphor for what happened to you.
Wow.
And it was.
Yeah.
And it was like another way for her to tell her story. And the other incredible thing that happened to her was, she told me, this was a couple of years into working together, she told me she thought she was going to have to go to do therapy for PTSD, right? And I said, well, what about? And she said, well, about like I don't have my heart. I don't feel like, she never remarried. And so we went in and we did that guided process where she released some stories, and I said, I think there's something still in you, go look. And she said, oh, it's a beautiful white heart. And I said, you got your heart back.
Oh, wow.
And it was this unbelievable moment for her. And she was completely changed. She didn't need to go into therapy after that. It just was this moment. She was just ready to integrate her heart back. She went in, and I record all my stuff, she went in and she transcribed it word for word. It was so significant of a shift for her. We didn't know that was going to happen. But because she was so present and she had done so much prior work, she was able to open up this whole new piece. And then she began writing about her father. She began reaching out to start saying she was ready to do workshops with other women. And she had basically been in hiding.
Wow, yeah.
So not only
Yeah.
did she find her story, she found her voice, she found her
Wow.
courage.
That's amazing.
It was amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm picking up on is when I've done a lot of therapy, I've studied psychology and been obsessed with the brain for a long time. I think without the proper guidance, we stay in the left side of our brain. We get very linear. We want to figure it out. We think it has to show up this way, this way, this way. With your process, what I love is it genuinely takes you to the other side of your brain where you have to trust whatever comes up, scramble everything, because you might get there quicker. You might actually be able to bypass the logical critic, the stuck space, if you trust the imagination again.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
I love what you're saying.
It gives people access. In a way, it's what you could get from your dreams if most of us were better at directing and remembering our dreams.
Yes.
But since we're not, this gives you access every time, always. It's one of those things where it can't not work as long as you trust what you get. And I do have a cool process that when someone says to me, well, I say, what's an image or a metaphor? Nothing, I got nothing. So I'll say, I'll do a little fun thing with you, okay? So if I have you, and we won't go through the whole thing, but I have people close their eyes and get in that clear space, right? Think of who you are. Okay, we'll do it for you. Think of who you are, what you do in the world. This is the short version. And now you ask, what is an image or a metaphor for who I am and what I do in the world? But I'm going to tell people a little fun trick, and I think it's in the gift I give, but sometimes people will say I don't have anything. So here's the trick. What shoe are you?
Oh my gosh.
If you had to pick, and this is for everybody, if you had to pick a shoe that represents who you are and what you do in the world, what shoe are you?
But you have to trust what comes.
Yeah,
right?
just whatever the first thing comes. It's none of the shoes you wear. So what shoe are you?
A red Mary Jane.
So why? So wait, before you answer that, actually, here's how you work with metaphor. The first thing you do is you describe your image in detail.
Okay. Well, first I saw I Love Lucy. I saw Lucille Ball. Because I used to watch Lucille Ball all the time. And then I liked her classic, outfits. They're very bold. She's got the white and the red. And so then her shoes were usually like somewhat of a classy heel, but with the strap across it. And it was red. And because she's the entertainer, she's funny. I don't know, I grew up with watching Lucille Ball, and that just popped in my head.
Right, so then if I was working with you longer, we would go more into how is that a metaphor also for the way you are and the work you do and the difference you make. But let's just help people with the shoe a little bit. So just describe that shoe. What does it look like?
Leather, it's shiny, it's very polished, it's comfortable. It's actually quite comfortable. It protects my toes. It's soft on the bottom, so it's got that nice little, it doesn't hurt. There's nothing that hurts about it, but it looks sexy anyway, that kind of
And
thing.
so how is that like what you do in the world?
Well, I do try to have people, I used to joke, I have people just try to very much enjoy the world in a comfortable way where they feel authentic.
Right.
And I think everybody feels a little sexy when they're feeling good about themselves. So that's
Right, and so you could then take it farther and say more, but what it does is it begins to pull out a quality of things that maybe someone wouldn't think of putting together, which is kind of what's unique about you. It's like it's comfortable, but it's shiny, it's bright, it's sexy, it's comfortable,
you can
it's
dance,
practical.
you can move around, you can show
it's
up.
It's holding you, Lucille Ball, who's like awesome and wild and funny and amazing. So you can take this thing with the shoe, because often what will happen is someone will not have exercise, so to speak, their metaphor muscles.
Right.
And I teach that, is how do you exercise and develop your metaphor muscles. So this, what shoe are you, is a really fun one to start with, because everyone can name a shoe.
Yeah. What I love is I actually know the process, and I feel like I have a good metaphor muscle. So what I do is I go, oh my gosh, what's headed my way? Because I know it's going to be something I don't understand, and I'm probably going to be a little embarrassed. I don't understand. And then I get it, and then my curiosity is like, really?
Right.
So what is that? And usually it fits, and it kind of, the shoe fits. And it kind of, but it actually calms me down because I think, oh, that's true. That's right.
Right.
I know more than me, because if I were to linearly have told you who I think I'm representing or what I want to represent or who represents me, I'd have sat there and churned through it.
Right.
And maybe got it right, maybe just said it because I should say it.
Right. It allows you, this work with image and story and metaphor allows you access to this creative thinking and often gives people insights they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yes.
And then images, metaphors, and stories contain a lot of information that people will remember and you can give over in a short amount of time. So they're very powerful in presentations, in selling, in speaking, and of course always in writing.
This is a question that I often get asked, so I love to ask you. Any advice for people writing a book and wanting to tell their personal story, but they're worried no one will care or that their story just doesn't matter?
So the thing about stories in like business or in the area of inspiration and influence is you do have to know what's the message of your story. Like, why are you telling it? So when I work with people, though, we'll go in the opposite direction. So you notice in my process, I have them first think about what's your message, right? What's your meaning, your message? What do in the think about it? That's your content. So then, when you get a story, we connect the dots. How does this story relate to this content? So there is no such thing as a not good enough story or a too intense story, but there is such thing as an irrelevant story. So you do have to know why. You have to make the connection, and it just takes a little bit of practice, support, work to be able to pull out the message of your story. Because when you get why you're telling it, people will want to hear it. You have to know who are you telling your story to and why. It has to be about them in a way.
About the audience, yes. I always say that going into the private world, the deeper you go into some of the details in the private world, the more vulnerable you are, the more universal it becomes.
It's an odd thing.
You actually start to connect. And it matters. It's 7.5 billion people in the world, and why tell a story twice? Why, not twice, but people will often say, well, my story has been kind of told before, but I say, but not by you.
Right. And the thing is, when you get in touch with your own story, it's very powerful. I did an interview series a number of years back it was just called The Power of Story, and it was really the story of your story. I asked people to tell the story of what happened when they began telling their deep, hard story.
Wow.
Because many people would begin businesses, especially a number of years ago, and they felt they couldn't tell these weird, hard, sickness, disaster, crazy stories because they wouldn't look good. But as the culture has changed, they became able to tell those stories, and almost every single one said, my business exploded.
Yes.
My life changed, because the authenticity and the power of that story has driven them so much to what they do in the world that when they weren't telling it, a piece of them was shut off.
Right.
Like my client who I said had been abused by a priest, she knew she had to bring that out in the world, but it takes a chunk of work to figure out how.
Right.
Like, people will say to me, but no one wants to hear my sob story. And I'll say, you know what? You're right. They don't. If it's your sob story, you can't tell it. Here's one tip. If you're still in your story and you haven't gotten your insight yet, you're not ready to tell it.
Right.
You have to have gone through your hard thing, come out the other side, and gained an insight. And if you've done that, even if you only did it last week, you can share your insight. What we can't stand is whining and complaining.
Totally.
Just saying.
So, Devorah, I have a question because I have found myself so blocked that I was almost just in kind of numb and in shock by the chaos in my life or the story I was telling myself that I was
Right.
trying to get out of. Even writing, I had maybe had to put it down because it was, there's this, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a chaotic stuckness that you actually know how to calm a person when they're in that
I
space.
do. I discovered this through my own feelings of chaos. I woke up one night, not too long ago, feeling bad. Like, I was like, everything was bothering me. And I sat down and I kind of meditated. I went, what's bothering me? And I went, oh, I'm in the goo. I'll explain. I had listened to someone a number of years back use the metaphor of the caterpillar to the butterfly this way. She said, when the caterpillar makes its cocoon and chrysalis, it literally turns to goo in there. It's not like the caterpillar stays caterpillar and gets some wings on it.
Wow.
The whole thing turns to this goo, and then it rebuilds itself into a caterpillar.
Crazy.
What I realized is that
Butterfly.
this...
Rebuild itself into the butterfly.
Yes, not another caterpillar. Rebuilds itself into the butterfly. So you go from the caterpillar to the goo to the butterfly. It's a classic image of the metaphor of the metamorphosis, right? So then I had a client who was a fitness coach, and she said, I'm having a problem where my clients are quitting in the middle. And she described to me for some reason that she was remodeling her office, and I said, you need to use that. I said, when you remodel, you have a vision, and then you realize you want to remodel. So you have a vision of where you're going to go. So you decide to remodel. So then you take down walls and you break things down to build new things, and it's a complete mess. So then you go, oh my gosh, this is horrible, it's such a mess, I'm going to just quit?
Oh.
No, that would be like really stupid. Like in a remodel, like you get that quitting because it's messy is really stupid.
Yes.
So I said, tell your clients this metaphor, because when they are working on their growth, their fitness, their weight, they're going to hit this period of chaos where they want to quit. But it's like a remodel. Then I use the refrigerator, the sticky goo, the sticky, stinky mess. You clean out your fridge. It's all full of containers. And if you're not perfect about cleaning it out regularly, sometimes when you take those lids off, they stink.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yuck, it stinks, I'll just go away.
No.
No, you gotta clean it out, and then you come, and then you have this open, clear space. So then I thought, what is this? And I thought, this is the absolute fundamental creative process that is the foundation of our entire universe. So I'm kind of a spiritual person. I follow Jewish tradition, and I love to read the Old Testament, the Bible, which we call the Torah. And how does it start? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And what was the first thing? There's his vision, right? The heavens and the earth, that's the vision. And it was chaos.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the first thing there is. God creates all this big and beautiful vision, and it's chaos. And then it says, and God said, let there be light, and then there's all the order comes. This process of vision to chaos to manifestation is absolutely fundamental to all creative process, period, to everything. So when you're in the chaos, or what I like to call the goo, if you know that, you can go,
Oh, I'm in the goo.
I'm in the goo. Which means I'm in a creative process. I'm in the natural transformational phase that is messy. Now, you still need tools to get out of the goo. Generally speaking, it's hard to get out of the goo alone.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the goo, it seems like all of reality forever and ever is going to stay
Hey, Devorah,
like that.
can you put on the rubber gloves and go get your headlamp on and get me out of the goo?
Right, and that's what we do for each other. It's what coaches do, it's what friends do. We help each other out of the goo. And as soon as I say to a client who's going through a hard time, I say, you're just in the goo. And they go, oh, this is just the goo. It's such a powerful reframe. And as soon as you know that, you then can think, okay, well, what do I need to do to get out of the goo? And there are lots and lots and lots of tools for getting out of the goo. The main thing is recognize you're in it and use a tool. It could be a meditation, a walk, a run, a friend, a talk, a read. It could be a million different things. But once you know you're in the goo, you do know you have to do something to get out of it.
Because you're not going to stay there looking at it. You go, oh, I just need to clean this off or move through it.
We need to grow forward, and generally speaking, that's why we need groups and support and books and all kinds of things that help you see that next step, take that next step. And so I created a whole program called the Sticky Messy Goo. And it's just a great title. And
I love it.
I did like a webinar on it, and it leads people through this awareness of what is it, how do you get out of it. So I have my process will help you get out of it, and then there's lots. Mine's not the only way out of the goo, but if you know you're in it, you can go, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then you can figure out what to do.
That's awesome.
It gives you that pause of perspective, which is a very powerful thing, because when you're in the goo and you don't know it, you feel like you don't that's when you can go into victim.
Yeah, and suffocate and anxiety,
as soon
depression.
as you know I'm still on the way to my vision, I'm just inside of this 3-step process, you become able to choose, and you're not in victim anymore.
Excellent.
It's very, very powerful.
You can't be a
reframe.
victim when you're turning into a butterfly.
Exactly. Because you know you're in part of a process, and this is just a normal step.
Yeah.
So it's what you could also say is you tell yourself a different story about what's happening to you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Speaking of groups and healing, you have a wonderful group. It's called the In Story Group. Can you tell us more about that group?
Yes, I would love to. And I love my in-story group. And I actually recently had this whole insight about how each of those tiny little words really teaches what it is. So it's called the In-Story Group. The in is that inner work I talked about, that inner guided work, the inner finding your story, clearing your story. Without that inner work, you're not going to get to the core of what you need. Story is all about how you take it out. How do you shape it, give it voice, give it form? How do you bring it out in the world? And group is because we can't do it alone. Humans simply don't do cool, awesome, amazing, big deal things all alone. We have to pick each other up, kick ourselves in the rear a little bit, help each other. Get out of the goo. Groups really help you do that. And so my in-story group, that's what we do. I take a whole group of people, it's an online group, so it's all virtual, people all over the world who do this with me, and we take a whole year, literally an entire year, of going in, bringing it out, helping each other, and people create all different kinds of form, but they also find their voice, their soul's calling. A lot of people are coming to me these days with this sense that their soul is calling them to something more, something deeper, something bigger, and they need to get it out in the world.
Definitely.
This group will help you get clear, get unstuck, and get your story out in the world. And it's a very creative, very healing, very soul-nourishing process. And I find that when people go through this, they feel like, okay, I feel more like I'm actually living my purpose. It's just an incredible thing. And I tell people also, if this is being asked of you, it's not going to go away.
Right.
Don't wait till you get hit up the side of the head by a 2x4.
Yes.
Like, follow your soul's calling as soon as you feel that inkling.
Yes.
Because it will nourish you and inspire you and make a difference in the world.
That's awesome. There's a quote, and I'm not going to say it quite right, by Denzel Washington, but he says, the fact that you have a dream or you have a passion and know that there's a purpose means that it's waiting for you to make it come true. That it's already in formulation.
Right.
But oftentimes we need help and guidance to get it out.
To get it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have a wonderful free gift.
Right.
That I'm really excited about personally. And let us know all about it. And by the way, everyone, it will be linked at the bottom of this page. You'll get all the links and you'll know how to contact Devorah and everything's there. But she's going to tell us about it right now.
Okay, so I did a training a year or so back called Metaphor Mastery. It was a 3-hour live training. And in this 3-hour live training, each hour has this guided state process. And I will actually take people through how to find and use metaphors. Nice. And you'll hear some people actually coached live on the training, so you will get a sense of how to use those metaphors. And then people will also have access to what I call a soul story session, so that if you get some kind of crazy metaphor and you have no idea how to use it, I don't leave you hanging. You will, everyone who gets this free gift will have access to a free session like that to figure out, what do I do with this when I get it?
Wow, that's awesome.
That's part of the metaphor muscle learning is people will get things and they like, oh, I got a boat. Like, what does it mean? Right? So pajamas. I don't get it. Whatever. So I will help them interpret it.
Yes.
And by going through the process, also people will begin to learn that. And I talk about both everyday metaphors, how you can use them every single day if you have to write newsletters and blog posts to keep them fresh, as well as how to go in and find core central metaphors for who you are and what you do in the world.
That's amazing. And I do agree. She will guide you through your metaphor, and you do it through questions, which I think is great. So take advantage of the free session. Find out about your metaphor and contact Devorah. It will be amazing, I promise you. So thank you so much, Devorah. I really appreciate this. This is great. Now everybody get out there and write. Get your metaphors together. Thanks. I'm going to give you a hug.
All right.
This is so much fun. Thanks. Okay, bye. See you next time.